Andrew and Courtney Simpson had been married happily for more than 10 years, even though they didn't have children. They both wanted kids but decided to wait until they were sure about their jobs and could support a family on one income. They were both in their 30s and successful lawyers. Andrew worked in civil law and Courtney specialized in contract law at a local firm in their hometown. After achieving financial stability, they were able to attend their first national convention of the American Bar Association, something they were excited about. During the long drive to the convention hotel, where they had a table reserved, they talked mostly about starting a family. They both felt ready, but Courtney admitted feeling nervous about it. At the board of directors reception on Wednesday evening, everything went wrong. The evening started well, with both Andrew and Courtney enjoying the atmosphere and chatting with their lawyer friends. Later in the night, after the official part of the reception ended, there was more drinking, dancing, and loud talking. Andrew noticed that Courtney was in a playful mood, which usually meant they would have a long night of sex. Courtney was beautiful and lively, but also a bit tricky and always flirted with others. Tonight was no different. Andrew, on the other hand, was more quiet and kept to himself. This was very different from his usual self at work, where he often argued. If someone started a conversation, Drew would immediately participate actively. He simply rarely initiated conversations with people he didn't know. When his wife ordered her fourth mojito of the evening, Drew ran his hand along the inside of her stocking-clad thigh. He felt the warmth she radiated with his fingers. That evening, he had spent an excessive amount of time on the dance floor with numerous partners and eagerly anticipated returning to their hotel room. When Drew finally got to what he often called his property, he realized that there was nothing left on her. His eyes lit up when he met the dark green eyes of his wife. There was that smoky, sensual look in her eyes, and he was ready to take her right there in the club. She leaned forward, revealing a large part of her thigh and her ample chest. She let out a low, approving whisper and purred. "I want to have fun tonight, darling," without breaking eye contact. "I can see that. I feel it too. Baby, let's go to the room. Look around. Darling, we've never been to this city before. Do you see anyone familiar?" Drew reflexively looked around. "I don't think so. Why?" "I want to have fun tonight," she said, with an unmistakable emphasis on I. He was stunned. He undoubtedly understood what she was implying. But although deeply shocked and gravely hurt, as an experienced trial lawyer, he instinctively knew not to reveal his true emotions. Drew couldn't imagine where this was coming from. The only potential warning sign he could point to was his wife's reluctance to have a child. Yet she had just agreed to do exactly that. "I understand, but what about our relationship?" She ignored his question, though not a trial lawyer. She knew how to interrogate witnesses and understood the importance of not letting the opponent distract her. She sighed and gripped his hand tightly. "Have I been a good wife? In the 15 years we've been together, have you ever doubted my love and loyalty to you? Even once since we decided to be exclusive in our first year?" She paused, searching for reassurance. "I know I flirt sometimes, but did you ever doubt me when you saw it?" It seemed like a rookie mistake for a lawyer to ask a question without knowing the answer, but she already knew it. "No, there weren't," she answered herself. "I never doubted your commitment to us until just now." He accepted what was coming with resignation. It was surprising how quiet she seemed in the middle of a nightclub with flashing lights, loud music pounding through their chests, and a DJ surrounded by over 200 cheerful lawyers. Amidst all this, they spoke in normal voices but didn't miss a single word from each other. "I told you I'm ready to have a baby. I just want this weekend for myself. I deserve it. And on Monday, I'll throw away my birth control pills for our future." She pushed his hand away, leaned back in her chair, and crossed her arms over her chest, emphasizing her ample cleavage and signaling that the conversation was over. "I understand. Have you already chosen someone?" He, of course, already knew the answer to his question. "Yes," she replied quietly but firmly. "All right, one last question. What compensation are you willing to pay?" "What compensation?" "Don't play dumb with me. You're a contract lawyer. You know what compensation is. What are you offering for my consideration? What price are you willing to pay?" Now he was close to losing control. He was stunned at how quickly his life was falling apart. "Darling, the only price we're talking about here is your ego. I know that by doing this, I will hurt you, and I will spend the next 30 years making up for it. This has nothing to do with what we have. It's Wednesday evening, and we don't have to leave until Saturday morning. I'll return to our hotel room on Friday evening, and we can start working on having a baby. Everything will be fine." It was over, 15 years together, more than 10 years of marriage. The end of our family that will never be. No children's laughter, no birthday parties, no first days of school, graduations, brides, or grandchildren bouncing on our knees. She had just admitted to deliberately hurting her husband. She did not think about it any longer. She was just a little girl, and she was a little girl. She was a little girl. She was a little and focused her attention on her target. She looked him in the eye and smiled seductively. She stood up and sidled over to him. She couldn't remember his name, but she remembered how he had pressed his aroused body against her thigh when they had recently danced some dirty dances. The shocking truth hit her when she felt another man against her leg. Until that moment, she had never thought about betraying Drew. But suddenly, she made a decision that would change her life, something she couldn't believe she was doing. Drew couldn't remember how he got back to the room. He vaguely recalled someone asking if he was okay in the elevator, but his head was spinning, and he felt shocked by what had happened. It all seemed unreal. Just moments ago, he had been imagining a wonderful future with Court, and now his marriage was over. Sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, Drew eventually made a plan. He knew what he needed to do and pushed himself to take action. Home was only 3.5 hours away, but Drew understood he had a couple of days to sort everything out. He realized that for the next 48 hours, Courtney would act as if he didn't exist. He had enough time to do what needed to be done. He understood that the first thing he needed to do in the morning was report their joint credit cards as stolen. If he was lucky, some hotel maid would find the purse Court left in the room and take it without reporting it. Drew didn't plan to touch anything his former wife had left in the room. He also thought that if the hotel maid took the purse, it would give him at least until Tuesday. The actual divorce would be simple and clean. They lived in an immaculate state. No kids, no house, no shared property. They had always kept their finances separate and contributed equally to the expenses. They earned about the same amount of money, so the divorce was the easiest part. Starting over was significantly harder. Drew quickly packed his suitcase and was ready to walk out the door. He paused for a moment, considering whether to leave her a note. But then he changed his mind, stepped into the hallway, and headed towards the elevator. The sound of the automatic door closing echoed down the corridor, signaling that he was closing the door on his previous life. On the way to the lobby, a thought struck him, and he stopped at the front desk to check if everything was in order. "My wife is in the car. We have an emergency at home, and we need to leave immediately. We left the keys in the room." He watched as the officious clerk pressed a couple of keys, and he realized the cards were deactivated. He couldn't help but smile slightly as he walked outside, knowing how much trouble Courtney would face in a couple of days. 7 years later, Drew sat in a hotel restaurant, sipping iced tea and waiting for his food. He had just attended an interesting seminar that would help him in his work as a family lawyer. As he glanced at a newspaper left on the seat next to him, he noticed the date was almost 7 years to the day since his divorce was finalized. Time really flies, he thought to himself. He accidentally said it aloud and quickly looked around, feeling a bit embarrassed to see if anyone had heard him. It had been a while since he last thought about Courtney. Though his divorce was straightforward, the experience made him realize how unfair the so-called no-fault system could be for the wrong party. He believed the system existed because some people couldn't handle their own problems maturely and instead caused chaos, needing intervention to resolve things. In those cases, the saying, "nobody wins in a divorce," rang painfully true. In any case, it was the motivation Drew needed to switch his specialty to family law. The truth, as he discovered, was that most divorces nowadays happen simply because both parties had made up their minds. There were few disputes, and both sides worked to resolve their situation as quickly and painlessly as possible. He handled any case that came his way. Still, he really enjoyed dealing with the relatively rare cases involving infidelity, where he suspected that the spouse of his client was trying to tighten the screws on his client. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a voice he still recognized. "Hi, Drew. How are you?" He looked up and, incredibly, saw her. He couldn't have been more shocked if he had been hit with a cattle prod. "Hey, Court, believe it or not, I was just thinking about you. What brings you to a family law seminar?" "I'm not here for that. I have another reason. Can I join you?" Drew asked. "Sure, I'm sorry," he added as he motioned for her to sit down. "I'm really surprised to see you, so excuse my manners." She sat up straight and spoke angrily. "You never talked to me, Drew. You ignored all my attempts to reach you. You didn't say anything to my family again, not even to my mom, who loved you. You didn't come to any of the hearings. You just disappeared. After 15 years together, you couldn't even say goodbye before you left. I walked up to our porch that Monday evening and was served divorce papers before I could even get in the door. When I finally got inside, there wasn't a single thing in the apartment that reminded me of you or our marriage. I see, you destroyed our marriage with an incredibly selfish act, and I'm the bad guy. If that's all you have to say, just leave me the hell alone. I'm really sorry. Just get out of here, Court, right now. He was flushed with rage. Most of the restaurant was now staring at them. She stood up and stumbled away in tears. At that moment, a whirlwind hit Drew. It was the chattering twin sisters and their younger sibling. They piled onto him at full speed, as they usually did. His wife was walking right behind them. She was laughing and smiling, but her smile quickly vanished when she saw his face. Her gaze darted to the rapidly retreating figure of Courtney. That was her. Wasn't it Drew? He could only nod his head as he was occupied with the 3 children. Without saying another word, his wife, Celia, quickly ran after Courtney. Drew watched as she caught up with Courtney. They began a conversation that ended with Celia helping Courtney to sit down. They must have talked for at least 10 minutes. It looked like they exchanged contact information. Then Celia hugged Courtney, and they parted ways. Celia returned to the table and grabbed their youngest so that Drew could corral the twins into a corner. Drew's eyes and mouth were wide open when Celia sat back down. She's coming to our home in a couple of weeks, and you two will talk. I mean, really talk. Don't say anything, just nod if you understand. Her tone left no room for argument. He simply nodded and started to play with the 2 children on his lap, who now filled his life. Later that evening, in their hotel room after their children had fallen asleep, Celia looked at him and asked, "Is there anything you want to say or ask her?" He took a deep breath and quietly replied, "In the first few years, I wanted to, but maybe my pride stopped me. But now? No, I have nothing to ask, and I'm glad I didn't give her that chance back then," he said firmly. "What? Are you joking? This can't be serious." "It's very serious, Celia. If I had allowed her to talk to me back then, she might have said something that would have made me reconsider. But if that had happened, I would never have met you, and our 3 children wouldn't exist. No, I don't need to talk to her, and I have no regrets." She hugged her husband and showered him with kisses. "You know just what to say to a girl, don't you, baby? But that poor woman needs to talk to you, so the least you can do is sit and listen." "I will, but really, what's the point? All she's going to say is how sorry she is. If I ask why, she'll say she doesn't really know, and so on and so forth. But I'll do it for you, and maybe it will help her find some peace. But why should I care? Drew, be sweet right now. Maybe I can't pinpoint it for you, but wouldn't you have liked to yell at her for a few minutes after seeing her? Maybe that's what will close the past for you too. Maybe you're right. Even excluding you and the girls from the equation, I realized before I met you that my life was better without her. The divorce made me reassess my life and what was important to me. Oh, sure, I went through the usual emotional turmoil that most people experience when a marriage fails. But that failure forced me to take a hard look at myself. Something I would never have done if she hadn't acted so foolishly." Drew paused to think and catch his breath. They say that the greatest successes can come from our biggest failures, and I firmly believe that to be true in my case. I'm much happier practicing family law now than I ever was practicing civil law. Sometimes I feel like I am truly helping people. I know I don't make as much money, don't drive a Beamer, and don't live in a lakefront condo, but I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. Now, what about her? Maybe you should ask her that question. What's the point, Celia? I have no regrets about where I am right now." He paused, then spoke just above a whisper. "Maybe it's not true. I do have one regret. I should have talked to her mother. She was a really nice lady. I know she cared about me, and I liked her. Since my own parents passed away long ago, she was like a second mother to me, and I left without saying anything to her." Celia fell silent. She had hoped that Drew meeting Courtney again would be good for both of them, but now she wasn't sure. Was she pushing Drew into something he didn't care about anymore? But could she stop it? As it turned out, Celia didn't have to do anything. The meeting never happened. The night before Courtney was supposed to come to town, Celia's phone rang after midnight. At that time, she always dreaded answering phone calls, but she reflexively answered. On the other end was a clearly upset woman. "Celia, this is Angela Joan, Courtney's mother. I need to speak with Andrew." The ringing phone had woken Drew, and Celia handed him the receiver. "It's for you. Andrew, it's Angela. Courtney took her own life yesterday afternoon. This statement was followed by the sobs of someone in indescribable pain. I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know what to say. Oh God, this is my fault. Now Drew was crying too, but he had no words. Celia, who had heard everything, clung tightly to her husband and was now openly weeping, feeling that somehow she was partly to blame as well. Andrew, it's not your fault. She had many issues, and she brought them upon herself. After the divorce, there were many things about her you didn't know. She left a sealed letter for you. I hid it from the police. No one knows about it except you and me. What do you want me to do with it, Andrew? Just keep it for now and let me think about it. Can you do that? Of course. Andrew, I need you here with me. Can you come? I'll be there as soon as I can. Mom, I'm bringing my whole family. I want you to meet them. I'm sure you'll love them. I'll call you tomorrow and we'll figure out a plan. Is someone with you right now? You shouldn't be alone. Yes. My friend Joyce is staying with me. I can't wait to meet your family. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And the call ended. Courtney's memorial service was held 7 days later on a cold but clear autumn day. And as promised, Drew and his family were there. Only a few people attended the service. Despite being a very competent lawyer, Courtney had no real friends. She was cremated, and her ashes were to be scattered in the park that she and Drew often visited when they were dating. Angela said it was the happiest time of Courtney's life. The loss of her daughter by her own hand was an almost unbearable burden for Angela. However, she quickly grew to love Celia and especially the three girls. By the end of the week, the girls were calling her Grammy Angie. Angela told Drew what had happened to Courtney's life after he left. He was shocked by the revelations of risky behavior, substance abuse, and mental health issues that followed the divorce. She even explained why Courtney was in the same hotel as Drew. She had disappeared with two men she met at a nightclub and was gone for more than a week. When she returned, she had bruises on her body. According to Angela, this was not unusual. Courtney was also close to losing her partnership at work. He was astonished at how one bad, sudden decision had sent Courtney's life spiraling out of control. The night before Drew's family was to return home, he and Celia had a long conversation and came to some decisions. The next morning, Drew pulled Angela aside while Celia kept the girls occupied. Mom, we need to talk about a couple of things. First of all, Celia and I want you to move in with us. There's nothing keeping you here anymore. You don't have to decide right away, but we want you to seriously consider it. We'd love to have you with us. If you decide to, we'll be there to help with the move. Please think about it. Oh dear, that's very kind of you. I promise I'll think carefully about it, but I'll miss her so much. She started crying again, and Drew held her until she calmed down. When she was composed, he continued, We need to talk about the letter. I think the best thing to do is take it and throw it, unopened, into the fireplace. That letter is meant for you, Andrew. I know, but I'm never going to read it. If you give it to me, I'll burn it, but I want to give you the option to keep it. I don't know about you, but I want to remember Courtney as she was before we got divorced. I want your memories to be of that time too. I'm worried that if we read the letter, we'll remember her as she was after the divorce. I want nothing to do with that letter. I'm giving it to you. If you decide to read it, the only thing I ask is that you never, ever mention anything about it to me. Angela was shocked by his response, but began to understand Andrew's reasoning. She desperately wanted to remember her daughter as she was before her actions broke their lives. Maybe the letter contained genuine remorse and an acknowledgement of how painful her decisions were. On the other hand, it might bring more pain. Andrew had told her about his recent encounter with Courtney. What if the letter contained more anger and guilt directed at Andrew? Courtney hadn't been in the best mental state, especially since her confrontation with Andrew. Angela was torn. Second story. He cheated on me and I found out everything a year later. My boyfriend and I have been together for a year now. We love each other very much, and he's my best friend. Before we met, I knew he liked me, but I was unsure about his intentions, so I didn't really talk to him. One day, he approached me, started a conversation, and we ended up exchanging contact information. After that, it was clear we liked each other and started talking. He introduced me to his parents, spent a lot of time with me, made me feel incredibly special, brought me food, introduced me to his friends, and posted about me. It felt like we were already a couple. Most importantly, he assured me I was the only one, and that I should only talk to him. However, the way I found out he wasn't truthful is a long story. I had to press him for every detail, and he wouldn't admit anything unless I had physical proof. When I finally found out, it devastated me. I spent a week in bed, unable to do anything but cry. I truly love him, and my feelings for him were genuine, so it hurts deeply that his weren't, even though he made me feel so special at the time. I was committed to him from the moment he asked if we would talk to anyone else. It's been about a month since I found out, and it has deeply affected our relationship. He has been very controlling throughout our time together, so discovering his lies drove me to madness, especially since I have never cheated on anyone before. If I were to describe everything I feel about this situation, I could write a book. I love him dearly, but I don't know if I can move past this. Am I crazy? If anyone wants more details, let me know because they are quite revealing.